Hi, my name's Laura Batante and this is My 2 Bits. Today I'm going to show you how to make this cute little snowshoe hare out of a toilet paper roll and some cardstock. Alright, I want to go over what materials we need for this video, but before I do, I'd just like to take a second and say that if you've been enjoying these videos and if you'd like to see more, please consider subscribing to my channel and giving this video a like. I would really appreciate it. So for this particular project, we don't need very many supplies at all. White cardstock, a little bit of pink and black cardstock, although if you don't have that, you can just color. That would be fine as well. Paper clips always make it a little bit easier. And here I have a pom-pom for the tail. Again, you don't need to use a pom-pom, you can just use paper. A toilet paper roll, a glue stick, scissors, and a black pen. You'll also need the template, which is free and you can find in the notes for this video. All right, I always recommend cutting out around the stencil pretty closely, just so that it does make it a little bit easier to cut. Here you'll note that I've also attached my template to two sides of my cardstock. That way I save myself having to make these two cuts, and the bottom cut is particularly important if you want your bunny to sit straight. So I would suggest that you do this as well. Of course you don't have to, but why not make it easier on yourself if you can? All right, so we're just going to cut out all of the pieces. So for this little guy, which is the back legs, you need to have a folded piece. So just take a piece of your cardstock and make sure it's big enough that your whole leg will fit in there. And then you're going to put this large dotted line on the fold, and it would be a good idea to trim off the bottom too. And again, we're going to use this straight edge. So we'll just line that up. And again, cut off the excess just to make it easier on yourself. And go ahead and cut that out. It is a little bit harder to cut through a double layer of cardstock, but certainly not impossible. So just do your best. You can always go a little bit wide, and then after you take off the template, you can double check your curves to make sure that you've cut it nicely. Now, for right now, we're going to leave these pieces on here because we're going to transfer some of the stencil information. Okay, so it turns out that not all toilet paper rolls are exactly the same diameter. So I have created this stencil so that it'll go around a pretty wide toilet paper roll with lots of overlap. But if your toilet paper roll isn't the same size as mine, these lines that I've put on here for his legs will probably not work for you. And the best thing to do is just take your cardstock now before you take it off the stencil, wrap it around, and then just have a look and see if these lines that I have on the side are basically centered halfway through the toilet paper roll. If they are, then you're good to go. And if not, then just don't put these marks on, and you'll have to eyeball that line yourself, and that isn't going to be really a big deal. Okay, so in order to get the legs on in the same spot that I have them, you're going to want to kind of make a little indent on the white cardstock. Now, it's easy enough to do just by tracing over and pressing quite firmly. But if that's not going to be enough for you, if you think that's going to be, see, that's even gone right through. But if you feel like that's not going to be good enough, you could take the stencil off, put a little bit of pencil in behind, and then do it, and it will leave a little bit of lead transfer. But I'm not too worried about it. But if you'd like to do that, go for it. Otherwise, of course, you could just eyeball it yourself. have to necessarily follow mine. And then I find that if I just put a little spot here, that's enough. This little X is just to show you where to put the tail. You don't really need it. And so you should be able to see very faint lines that we can use to put our drawing on with. Okay, so I'm just going to go over those lines. Doesn't have to be 100%. There we go, and then his eyes are up here. And I put the eyes on just to help us with the placement for the nose. Okay, so the rabbit is about 1 3/4 inches or 4 centimeters tall. So we're just going to cut our toilet paper roll smaller than that, and I have this at 1 1/2. And the easiest way to do it is put a little mark and then just squeeze it and give a little cut. And then stick your scissors in and cut all the way around. And it doesn't have to be perfectly straight. It does have to be smaller than our stencil though. I mean our finished rabbit here. So if you think you got a little bit high in one spot, you can just go back in and give that a little trim. All right. Then before we attach it, of course, if we check, make sure we can't see it. And we can't, so there you go. Now, do make sure when you're gluing it on that you're gluing it on to the flat side, matching the flat side, not this rough side. All right, just before we wrap this around our toilet paper roll, why don't we put our ears on? That might make it a bit easier. That is a lot of glue right there. When I did it last time, I did it when the bunny was already made, and it was fine. So if you don't do it at this stage, it's not a big deal, but I think it might be easier to do it on the flat here. There we go. And we'll let that dry just a bit. So just before we attach this, I'm going to rub the cardstock a bit with my hands to try and get it to curve just a little. Just makes it a little bit easier to attach it if it's already got a kind of a bit of a curve going on. So we need to attach it with a lot of glue. So we're going to glue this part like so, all the way up to one end. The other side is going to overlap, so we'll deal with that in a minute. And this is another one of those times when having the paper clips is really great. So we can put our paper clip on while we wrap it. Help hold it in place. We want it nice and even. And then when we get here, we're going to put glue. All the way up. Excellent. And then we'll just attach it with a couple of paper clips so that it can dry like that. There we go. Looking good. So while we're letting that just dry for a minute, we can put our nose onto our little bunny muzzle. And you could do a pink nose if you want. And in fact, you could do your bunny any color you want. I did a snowshoe hare because it's winter out. But if you have a pet bunny at home who's brown, then you could for sure go ahead and make a brown bunny. So I attached the nose, put on a few little dots. I always like to do 3, and then a little white highlight that I put on with a gel pen, but if you don't have that, you don't need it. And we're going to put that aside for now. We'll put that on later, and we want to make sure that that's nice and dry. So now we have to deal with these feet. So while we still have the template on the legs, we're going to cut a little notch in. And then before we get rid of that. You won't see it anyway. Before we attach it on here, we're going to draw on his little toe. Now, you could trace this the same way we did before, but it's just really one curved line, so it's not that big a deal. And if you like, you could do this line here as well. And we're just following that curve up. All right. So now what we also have to do is we have to cut our line in that we marked on here. And you can barely see it, I know, but it's a little dot that I put my mark on. And we're just going to take one nice straight cut up like so. And we're going to do that on both sides. Okay, now we're going to take our legs and stick them on. And this is kind of a little fussy, but just going to work it up the slot there and the other one. And we're going to go till we're straight, nice and flat here. And if you have a little bit of a problem, just keep wiggling it around and eventually you'll get there. So there we go. Now we're going to attach his little nose, and the same thing, I'm going to just kind of bend it a little because we are not attaching it to a flat surface. So it's a lot easier if you kind of get a pre-bend in there. And so we're just going to place that between his legs and his eyes. And of course, if you wanted to, you could put whiskers on or change his nose. You could make his nose pink if that's what you like. Do whatever you want. It's your bunny. And then you can bend the ears as well. And then now all we need to do is around here on the back, and I'm not 100% sure this guy's dry, is to attach our tail. So you can attach this tail if that's what you have, or you can attach this tail, and usually I use craft glue, but since I didn't mention it in the materials, I'm just going to attach it with this guy, and I think it'll work just fine. So there we go. He's all done. So have fun with that and make a few. You can make a whole little family of those. And again, if you liked this video, please give me a like and consider subscribing to my channel. You don't get any annoying emails or anything like that. You have to actually look into your subscriptions to find the videos unless you hit the notification bell. So thanks for joining me. Stay tuned, and we'll have another great craft next week.